Pat would normally be giving this sermon, so any eyes in this, I'm going to read it as she wrote it, so you'll just have to use your imagination, or better yet, make a leap of faith and pretend that you see an articulate, rather attractive, blonde woman here instead of, well, I'll leave it to you to fill in the blanks for a description. It occurred to me the other day, as I was reading the gospel for myself, that these young fishermen Jesus was gathering really didn't have a clue what he would ask of them in just a short time. They were naturally drawn to him, we might say, as moths to a flame. They didn't really fully understand what the light was. Theirs was the world of dark empire, of oppression, of cruelty. And yet, here Jesus was, with his compassion and hopefulness for the future. The people who walk in darkness have seen a great light. Well, they may have seen it, but there's a big difference between seeing and understanding. You see, to understand the light, we must also be familiar with darkness. We all have in common our fear of the dark. And there's no more common fear among us than that from the time we're little. Why is it then, if the gospel is the story of the light of the world, that darkness is mentioned 100 times in the Bible? As Barbara Brown Taylor mentions in her book, Learning to Walk in the Dark, the verdict is unanimous in the book. Darkness is bad news. She says, in the First Testament, light stands for life and darkness for death. When God is angry with people, they are plunged into darkness. In the Second Testament, light stands for knowledge and darkness for ignorance. Yet even in the Bible, that's not the whole story, she says. She goes on to say, anyone who knows the story of Abraham remembers the night God led him outside to look at the stars. The old man was deep in doubt about whether God's promise of children would ever come true. Count the stars if you're able, God said to Abraham, for so shall your descendants be. Later, God would come to Abraham's grandson, Jacob, in the middle of the night when he was fleeing and could not run any longer. Jacob lay down in the middle of nowhere and fell asleep. And he saw a ladder with its feet on the earth and its top reaching toward heaven, with the bright angels of God climbing up and down it. And God said the same thing, more or less, to Jacob. Know that I am with you and will keep you wherever you go, for I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. Reverend Taylor's point, and ours, is that God is present in the darkness as well as in the light. And there's a reason we need to understand the darkness. Sometimes that's the only way to understand the light. The Exodus took place at night. The Israelites were guided by a pillar of fire through the darkness. For as long as humans have been able to look up, they have seen amazing lights in the sky. And they knew they meant something profound. But the thing is, these amazing things don't just take place at night. We're only able to see them better by contrast at night. In the brightness of every day, over our unseen heads, they still happen. Northern lights streak through the sky, unnoticed behind the blue. Comets remain unappreciated. Distant stars explode into supernovas, and we don't notice a thing. And yet, God is present with us, even when we doubt. The reality is, when we understand the darkness, we can learn a lot. Since we all share a common fear of the abyss, of death and darkness, Jesus used this with his disciples so they would comprehend that he was the light of the world who conquers the abyss. When Jesus and the disciples were in the middle of the Sea of Galilee with a fearsome storm threatening to sink their boat, it was Jesus who calmed the storm and reminded them to trust in him. Jesus, you see, put his light up against the darkness, and then the light won. When once again they were sailing without Jesus on the sea, he came walking toward them atop the waves. When Peter tried to walk on water, he succeeded, up to the moment he doubted himself. Then he sank like a stone until Jesus rescued him. On yet another occasion, the disciples watched as he called forth out of the abyss of a tomb, holding once dead a man, and now the living and breathing form of Lazarus, like a shining star against the blackness of non-being. In each of these moments, Jesus juxtaposed his light against the darkness so that we could see his brilliance even more clearly. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Darkness within our own lives brings everything into sharp focus. How many of us take for granted the thousands of hours of healthy life that we've been given until suddenly there's something seriously wrong with us? How many of us have ignored the extra time we could have spent with people who love us until that moment when their hand is no longer there for us to take? The darkness teaches us in ways that sunlight cannot to appreciate the light. As Barbara Brown Taylor says, the way most people talk about darkness, you would think it came from a whole different deity. But no. To be human is to live by sunlight and moonlight, with anxiety and delight, admitting limits and transcending them, falling down and rising up. To want a life with only half of these things in it is to want half a life shutting the other half away, where it will not interfere with one's bright fantasies of the way things ought to be. Darkness becomes the most convenient place for people to store all their shadows, their fear of the unknown, their anxiety about the future, their loathing of their own helplessness, their bottomless dread of death. Our avoidance of the shadows can keep us from even encountering what beauty lies in those shadows. When I was with the Connecticut Audubon Society, we had many incredible walks through the deep woods around our nature center, places where wildflowers and colorful salamanders and other creatures lived. We had a successful program for children from the inner cities of Bridgeport and New Haven to introduce them to a side of nature they never had a chance to see where they dwell. After some initial shyness, these kids loved it. We planned a Saturday where they invited their parents to come and walk the nature center paths with them. A number of parents did come, but when we walked further on the paths, some of them hesitated, and one flat out refused to go any further. For them, the unfamiliar, the dark and dense forest, was a place where their fears still lived. A similar thing happened when I was with a mother whose toddler was part of a Milford seashore program with our naturalists, taking the little ones down on the beach to explore the tide line and all the creatures in it. When her boy was taken down to play on the sand, I invited her to join them. She quickly said that she couldn't, that she had been raised to think that bad things lived on the beach and would hurt her. Some of our biggest fears are ghosts of past things. We may not have actually experienced them ourselves, but we were warned about them by other fearful people. Sir Francis Bacon said, "In order for the light to shine so brightly, the darkness must be present." When we seek out the great light, that is Jesus, it's essential that we have the faith to take a step or two into the darkness to learn that God is there too. May God lead you this week through the darkness to that place of the perfect light. Amen. As you walk through life this week, may you reflect the light of God's love, and may it mingle with the light that emanates from your own soul, so that you can see your way and illuminate the way for others in all that you say and do. Amen.